Hey, Alexi, this is Luke from Denver. My question today is, if they don't care, why should we? This is obviously in reference to the news that Pulisic and Mosse have decided, I'm assuming on their own accord, not to be included in the Gold Cup roster. So yeah, if they don't care, why should we? Unfortunately, I'll always care because I just love this nation and this team too much not to. But personally, I think it's disrespectful to this nation and to the diehard fans that spend their hard-earned time and money supporting this team, no matter what. And I think this is on Christian and Eunice, but also on the Federation. I think, especially in the moment that we're in, if they come to you saying they're too banged up and need to rest, I think you need to say, hey, I get it, long season, but this is too big of a moment to pass up right now. We need you in camp around the guys, building chemistry with the team every day. You know, we'll give you some rest through the friendlies maybe and part of the group stage, but this is too important to miss right now. And I think it's a real bummer because this seems to be a trend going forward with this new generation. And I just want these guys to really care about this team as much as some of us fans do. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. Thanks. Love the podcast.
Hello, Sunshine. I'm Alexi Lalas, and welcome to the State of the Union podcast, where we look at the beautiful game on and off the field through the lens of red, white, and blue-colored glasses. This show, well, we will be talking about the Gold Cup roster, which just dropped, and this U.S. men's national team 385 days before the 2026 World Cup kicks off. But first, joining me, as always, my friend, my colleague, my guiding light, David Mosse, a soccer savant and a Fox soccer researcher and writer extraordinaire, and also joining us today, thankfully, a longtime listener and participant in the show, my friend, my colleague, I guess my nightlight, Stu Holden.
I'll take nightlight.
Gentlemen, how you doing? Mosse, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Did you catch Stu before we started taping complaining that he hasn't been on in a while?
Yeah. You know, I'm still the leader in the clubhouse, but it had been a while. I mean, I got up here. You guys are on this stage A, upper stage.
Well, you're
both looking wonderful, by the way.
You're treading in dangerous waters because you showed up kind of late to the show. Everyone was freaking out.
I was early. But, what was my call time? 11? I was here at 10:55, baby.
I think we've talked about the fact that we travel differently in that you, for Stu Holden, the most perfect traveling experience, and we'll talk about that actually later in the show, your travels, is for him to wake up, don't miss a beat, get in the car, get to the airport, into the airport, right through security, and then as the door is closing right on his ass, the door closes, he sits down and the plane takes off. He doesn't want to give any time back to
efficiency.
As opposed to me, I would rather be there 2 hours beforehand and not have to worry about that.
I'm all about efficiency. I've got my pre-check, my clear. I travel enough. I've got it down pat, and I know what I'm doing. Lex, you get there way too early and waste time sitting around in uncomfortable seats among strangers. Just get it done, man.
All right, listen. Don't bore us. Get to the chorus, right,
let's
Mosse?
do it.
Yeah, now listen, I spoke to Sean, and I want to be fresh for the World Cup, so I'm actually going to sit out to this time.
Wow.
Early killer
Okay,
line.
listen. The roster has dropped for the this summer's Gold Cup. Mosse, I know you're going to take us through, and I think we all have plenty of thoughts.
Yeah, so today Mauricio Pochettino effectively named the Gold Cup roster. He named a 27-player training camp roster. The Gold Cup is 26, so one player will be cut, presumably a goalkeeper. You don't need 4 goalkeepers for the Gold Cup. The roster does include some big European-based names, Chris Richards, Serginho Dest, Tyler Adams, Folarin Balogun, but it includes 16 MLS players, Diego Luna, Sebastian Berhalter, Brian White among them, 5 uncapped players, Matt Freese, Alex Freeman, Quinn Sullivan, Sebastian Berhalter, Damian Downs. We're going to dissect the roster in a minute, but let's be honest, the bigger story is who is not on there. There are some notable absences for various reasons. McKennie, Weah, and Reyna because of the Club World Cup. We knew that. Pepe because of injury. We knew that. Yunus Musa asked out for personal reasons. And then Pulisic and Jedi are absent as well. I'm going to call it for load management. Pulisic evidently asked to not play in this tournament. And look, we've grown accustomed in recent years to the U.S. sending a less than full-strength squad to the Gold Cup, but we all thought this edition, because it's a year out from a World Cup in the United States, it's the only chance for Pochettino to manage in a tournament setting analogous to the World Cup. It's the longest chunk of time he's going to have with players before the World Cup. And given some of the U.S.'s results the last 12 months and the need to generate some momentum, we thought it would be all hands on deck this summer. It's far from it. Alexi Lalas, your thoughts?
I guess I should preface this by saying that when we talk about these things, I am going to be turning 55 in a few weeks. Obviously, I played at a different time. Obviously, the world has changed. The world of soccer has changed. And I constantly am trying not to appear like a grumpy old man when I'm talking about these things. The other thing I think it's important to note is that the United States Soccer Federation has a problem. The U.S. men's national team has a problem. I guess you could look at it as a business problem, a marketing problem, in that this team right now, given some of the failures that you mentioned, Mosse, over the last couple of years, is at a point right now where I can't think of a time in the past, not even qualifying for the World Cup, when there has been less, I guess, interest and emotion, and to the point of the caller at the beginning of the show, less caring about this team. Now, that is a problem that needs to be solved. As we said, 385 days away from the kickoff of the World Cup. When I look at this team, I thought that this summer, like you just mentioned, was going to reflect the fact that we are going to at least start to try to solve this problem and start to try to reignite some interest and some passion and some love and caring for this team and belief in this team ultimately as we head into next summer. But this decision does not fill me with confidence, and it makes me angry. And again, I have plenty to say about Christian Pulisic, but in general, that's what happened this morning when I saw the news and what this team is. It doesn't mean this team can't be successful this summer, but their job this summer is to make people care again. And when you have people opting out, when you don't have a full-strength team off of recent failures, I hope that this isn't a missed opportunity for these players, for Mauricio Pochettino, and for the United States Soccer Federation.
Stu?
Yeah, I think with everything you're saying there, I try to do the same, right? It's very difficult in our position as former national team players who care deeply about the program, who want nothing more than this national team to succeed on the biggest stage, because it's a reflection on all of us, and we're constantly going through this battle of trying to punch through the ceiling and break through in soccer in the United States. And I think that this situation has been created for a number of reasons, and all of them have resulted in where we are now, which is that all of these players, and I could make a logical, explanation and excuse for these guys missing. And it could be, well, as you talked about, it's a different game now. FIFA, with the amount of tournaments, they've got the Club World Cup this summer. The Gold Cup's played every 2 years. We played a Copa America last year. It's all about the World Cup next year, and that's all that truly matters. But to me, that feels like a cop-out. And we've created an environment where really we have glamorized so much the playing in Europe and European soccer and, being at some of the biggest clubs in the world and playing in the Champions League. And really the priorities have shifted in the mentality of players, where it's now club soccer is almost pushed ahead of international soccer outside of a World Cup or outside of a Euro. And you've almost said to players, it's okay. You can miss the Gold Cup this summer because we need you healthy. You're going to have a great season at AC Milan. You're going to have a great season at Juventus. And next summer, if you guys perform, nobody's going to care. And I hate that. I truly hate that. And I can be mad at, CONCACAF and FIFA and US soccer and all of that. And I try to put myself in these players' positions. And would I feel the same coming off the back of 2 big seasons in Europe? And this is Pulisic's case. And saying, well, would I want to play in the Gold Cup? And I keep coming back to yes. And that's where I think my anger comes towards this situation. And that, if I'm Christian Pulisic, I'm the star of the team. I carry a big brunt of the forward-facing responsibility, and on the field, off the field, everything, first fingers pointed at you. And I see that, the Club World Cup's happening. Gio's not going to be there. Weah's not going to be there. McKennie's not going to be there. Anthony Robinson's getting a rest. I could make an argument if I'm Pulisic saying, well, why should I turn up? Well, you're the leader of this team. And, that comes with that responsibility of being the best player, that you are a leader. I know he's not the traditional leader of what we've all wanted, but I would still love, and what a powerful message it would have sent if Christian Pulisic stood there and said, I'm going to the Gold Cup, guys. I want you guys to come with me. It's important for this team to put a good performance on this summer, not just for the fans, because it's great for the fans, but this team needs it, man. They're lost right now. And yeah, we got a lot to talk about. I got to let Mosse get in here for a minute.
By the way, it's not just the Gold Cup they're missing. It's also these friendlies against Turkey and Switzerland, 2 quarterfinalists at the last Euros. Those are very valuable games, a lot of useful data points. It's a shame that they're not going to play in those games as well. I went back and listened to the pod we did from SoFi after the loss to Canada in the third-place match of the Nations League, and you asked me what I thought the best starting lineup was for the U.S., and from the midfield up, I said Adams, McKennie, Musa, Pulisic, Weah, Pepe. 5 of those 6 will not be with the team this summer. And yeah, to your point about club over country, now you're hearing about all these niggling injuries these guys have. Milan plays Monza this upcoming weekend in Serie A, the last game of the season. Fulham is home to Manchester City in the last Premier League game of the campaign. I'm very curious, guys like Pulisic, Musa, Jedi Robinson, are they going to be out there for their clubs after pulling out of this summer with the U.S.?
I would guess. I guess also, when we think about it, the big sell on the Gold Cup with this summer was that this is the longest period Pochettino will have with this team ahead of the World Cup. It's going to replicate a similar-ish type of cadence with games, travel, and by the way, it didn't go too well for the U.S. the last time they're in this situation in the Copa. So how much emphasis do you put, Alexi, on prioritizing the Gold Cup versus, look, there's a rumored friendly they're going to play in Qatar against Argentina. They're going to play some Asian countries at some point in the fall. Friendlies are friendlies. This is a tournament. I know you could say, okay, it's Canada, US, Mexico, blah, blah, blah. We play these teams all the time. Hey, by the way, we haven't done so well the last 2 years against these teams since the World Cup. So to me, I prioritize this more than those friendlies.
Yeah, when it comes to Christian Pulisic, here's the problem I have. To your point, he is, I think, when all is said and done, going to go down as the best male American soccer player in history. There will be, some argument there, but I think that's heading in that direction. He is, without a doubt, a starter for this team, and he changes the game when he is on. And it should be said that even starting with this team since he was a teenager, he has brought it for the national team. While sports in general are a meritocracy relative to the rest of the world and the other things that we do, they're not an absolute meritocracy in that people are treated differently. And yes, Christian Pulisic, because of how good he is, at times is, and I think fairly so, been treated differently. However, I cannot relate to someone in his position who is a national team player opting out, not wanting to represent your team. And I get it. I played in a different time, okay? But I also would bring up the fact that, the time that I played in, it was bad. It wasn't even close to the resources and the opportunity. And let's be honest, the protection that players have. And whether it's charter flights or the way the game is refereed, or the amenities that they have, or the medical that they have, all these different things. And yes, they play a lot of games. But you know who plays a lot of games? Messi. I cannot relate to a player when his country needs him and wants him to represent that you say no, especially in this moment. And that's the problem here. This is a bad look for Christian Pulisic, but what it also is a bad look for this team at the exact moment when they need to be doing the opposite. This summer, you need to come out with people looking around and saying, I'm jacked. I cannot wait to watch the World Cup next summer because of what I've seen, and I'm extrapolating that out. So this is not the summer and the time to go missing. You use this summer, to your point, last opportunity to be in a tournament situation. Oh, by the way, in the country that you're playing the tournament next year, and you say no. Okay, fine. If that's what you want to do, then you better bring it a year from now when they are playing in the World Cup. And there's nothing that he say you won't. I just think it's a bad message. It's a bad look. And I cannot relate to that. And that's where I get into the grumpy old Manning thing. And it was a different time. And while I can't relate to what Christian Pulisic has done in his life in terms of being a soccer player and the things that he's done, I do think that I can speak to being the focal point of the national team. I do think that I can speak to where people are looking at you and people are asking of you off the field and all the other things that come with that. I leaned into it and loved it. Christian Pulisic is a very different type of personality in the way that he approaches his job. But ultimately, in this moment, when I do think not just the team, but the country, again, a year out from the World Cup, needed him to come in and be part of this team that changes the vibe and changes the way that this team is looked at, he's not going to be there. And that's disappointing.
It's interesting because Pochettino was giving interviews the last few days bemoaning the Club World Cup because it's going to prevent him from having all his best players. But then by agreeing to leave some of these guys out, he sort of undercuts his own message. And I do think, Lex, this generation of U.S. players, the big-name European-based players, they fundamentally don't buy into the Gold Cup. They care about the World Cup qualifying. If we play in a Copa America, sure. And then the Nations League Final Four, you fly in, you play 2 games in a few days, you can collect a trophy, great. But a month-long CONCACAF trophy, I do think that they feel like they're above it.
But I feel like you're the person to dig in on this. I mean, when you look at CONCACAF, right, the Nations League, which Europe rebranded with the friendlies and the international windows, I feel like has gone terrifically well for them with this, the Nations League final, which I'll be traveling over for in 2 weeks, and you have big teams, blockbuster final. They have their Euro every 4 years. We have the Gold Cup every 2 years. And so I'm curious of your opinion of, has it almost backfired in CONCACAF's face by the way in which they've branded this Nations League? And it has always essentially come before the Gold Cup. So this would have been, and what I was hoping is we would have had the best U.S. roster we've had since 2019 at a Gold Cup. And many of these guys had not been on a Gold Cup roster because of that fact. They played in the Nations League and they left. And to your point, we've almost created a situation where these guys are like, well, okay, Nations League's done, and now the Gold Cup is like the opportunity for the B guys to kind of punch through. Is that?
Absolutely. The CONCACAF Nations League is detracted from the Gold Cup, and I do think it should be every 4 years. The Copa America is moving to that, too. The Euros was already there. So, yeah, I do think that's something that CONCACAF needs to look into.
I mean, I listen to you say that, and I know I'm being idealistic when I talk about this. And I know I'm, again, far removed from kicking the ball. But it pains me and it makes me sad that when your national team calls, what's really calling is your country. And whether it's the Gold Cup or anything else, I mean, that's crazy to me that this is the situation that we have created. And that's on the federation. I guess that's on all of us that we have created a situation where players would rather go and do something else than represent their country.
You mentioned Pulisic on track to being the greatest male U.S. player. In that inevitable compare and contrast with Landon and Clint Dempsey, do you think the fact that those guys always answered the call and played in Gold Cups, et cetera, when that debate occurs at the end of Pulisic's career, that would be an argument in their favor?
I think the problem right now is that whether you're looking at Christian Pulisic and this decision, but more importantly, I guess, this entire team in terms of the way that the public views it, is they think they're weak, is they think they're soft. And we have had bad teams in the past. We have had bad results in the past. We have had difficult times in the past, but never have I seen the way that people look at this team be referenced as to they are weak and they are soft and they won't do the things that enabled us to make up a lot of ground over a very short period of time. But it really was just about being physical and working hard. And yeah, I mean, that pains me.
Yeah.
And it should pain this team. The fact that people out there are saying that you don't care, whether it's fair or not, that is what's going on. People are actually looking at this team and saying, why should I care if what you are doing leads me to believe that you don't care?
See,
how the hell did we get here?
No, I think you're making a great point. And when we try to analyze and look at this from the big picture, I think what you're seeing is players recognizing, hey, look, this is my last real chance to kind of make this decision ahead of the World Cup. And once the friendlies start in the fall, like that's going to be the main guys, and that's my team, and that's our time to get dialed in towards the World Cup. Without recognizing where this team is right now in the perception of the public, in the perception of Mauricio Pochettino, by the way, who's barely been in the job. It's been a not great start for him, and that's putting it mildly to this point. And that's where I think it's misguided in choosing this is your moment to make the stand of, I need my rest. If anything, that should be summer of 2027, or it should be after the World Cup. This is the time where you have to recognize that unless you truly believe and you have conviction as a team that everything's fine, we're going to be fine come 2026. I believe in our team. I believe in the players. I believe in our mentality. We're going to get the job done, because ultimately, as you've said many, many times, Lex, all that matters is what happens come that first kick of the ball, 2026, and what this team does ultimately at the end of 26. That's what they're going to be judged upon. But I don't believe that the team is there. I think you need more than that for this team to believe, for the fans to believe, to build momentum. I could go on and on and on, and that's where my frustration comes, that this is the moment you choose. You know what? I need a break. I need to back off of this. Do it in the Nations League then and play in the Gold Cup this summer.
My last point, and then I would like to segue to the roster.
I got like 30 more minutes.
The one way that this story could have a happy ending is we've talked about it being the same nucleus for a while, it growing a bit stale. If the absence of some of these players opens the door for the Diego Lunas, the Brian Whites, the Sebastian Berhalters to really shine this summer and convince Pochettino that they should have a big role in 26, and then those players help the U.S. have a successful World Cup in 26, we could all look back and say it worked out for the best.
Well, that's the glass half full one, and I'm actually a perfect example of that. So the U.S. in 2009, they went to the Confederations Cup. I was not part of that roster with Bob Bradley. They knocked off Spain on the number one team in the world. They were on an insane win streak. They lose to Brazil in the final. The Gold Cup started, maybe 5 days after that. And Bob Bradley said, look, I can't take these guys to the Gold Cup. So we essentially took a B roster to the Gold Cup. That was my first cap with the national team. I used that tournament as a platform for me to score goals, to become a key player in that team. Then I was in on the roster in the fall, which was World Cup qualifiers. And then that set the table for me to make the World Cup. And that is the hope. And that's the sell now about this Gold Cup. And that's why you should care, because if I'm on that roster, I hope I see a bunch of guys that care about this team and use this as an opportunity to not only put themselves in the roster, to push those guys that don't turn up out of the starting 11.
The final didn't go too well in that Gold Cup, right?
You lost. You were itching to bring that one in.
5-0
really?
to Mexico.
5-0 to Mexico, yeah.
Can we just close this here and say, and again, it goes back to something I said earlier, is how we find ourselves here. It never in my wildest dreams, even back before you guys were born, back when I was running around in the 1900s, and what will be 32 years on from the 1994 World Cup, I never envisioned that a year before the World Cup, these are the types of conversation that we would have.
Yeah.
I never envisioned that we would be worried that we're not going to get out of the group. I never envisioned that we would be lamenting the fact that our team is a bunch of soft, weak, coddled,
rudderless,
tattooed millionaires, whatever it ends up being. And I'm not saying that there wouldn't be criticism, but I do think that this team this summer has an opportunity, to your point, and if they use it, they can light a fire, hopefully, for the players that aren't there, and they come back and say, you know what, does stink just like everybody else's, and you better bring it. And if that's the case, great. I wish that this group had been brought together this summer to say, you know what, we screwed up recently. We're going to fix it this summer, and we're going to give you a moment to celebrate and be excited and be proud of what's coming and to believe in this team again. And then we go great guns all the way through for the next year and show up next summer. I do think that the team next summer, regardless of what happens here, is going to rise to the occasion, but I do think it's going to look very, very different in terms of what we envisioned relative to either a year ago or 30 years ago.
All right, so as for the roster, we'll go back to front. There are 4 goalkeepers: Matt Turner, Zach Steffen, Matt Fries, Patrick Schulte. Matt Turner, fresh off winning the FA Cup with Crystal Palace. He played in 3 earlier rounds, but we know he didn't play a whole lot in general again this season. I think there is very much a goalkeeping battle between Turner and Steffen. Let's remember, Steffen was going to start that third-place game in the Nations League against Canada, but he came down with an illness. How do you see it?
I mean, everything we've said before is that Zach Steffen, it'll be an amazing flipping of the script in that when Matt Turner burst on the scene, he took it away from what Zach Steffen and the trajectory that Zach Steffen had been on. And that Zach Steffen, it didn't go well in Europe, and he's found his way back, and he's playing really, really well here in Major League Soccer. I will say that, you mentioned, I think, 16 players on the roster are MLS. At least that lends itself to what Pochettino has said, where he doesn't care where you play, especially when it comes to Major League Soccer. And if he is able to find players and is able to find value in Major League Soccer, I mean, that's a good thing for MLS. But I agree with you. There is a goalkeeping question right now. But I do think, as the incumbent, Matt Turner will be given the benefit of the doubt, at least initially.
I hope this is an open competition. To your point, Mosse, the fact that Matt Turner was going to be benched for that third-place game, Zach Steffen was going to get an opportunity. And look, when I look at these goalies, I'm still pretty high on Patrick Schulte. I think he's got a high ceiling going forward. The same with Matt Reese has been fantastic. Matt Reese, speaking of a good goalie, Matt Freese with New York City. These guys I don't think are realistically going to be your starters next year when you're thinking about experience and stepping on that field at the biggest stage. Zach Steffen had played a number of high-profile games with the U.S. before he lost his position to Turner. So I truly think it's between Turner and Zach Steffen. And I want to see Steffen get an opportunity. I was kind of down and out on Steffen, and he's a perfect example of a guy who has come back to MLS and rehabbed his image by playing meaningful games or multiple games and consistent games. And that's going to be the big question for Matt Turner. This becomes a huge summer for him, not only with the national team, but also at the club level, because he's got to find a situation next season where he's playing every single game. And I think if he is, he'll be your starter in 26. But right now, I'm not willing to give him that position.
The fullbacks, we've got Dest and Alex Freeman at right back, DeJuan Jones and Arfston at left back. I think at left back, it's about finding a backup to Anthony Robinson. Mm-hmm. At right back, you'd like to see Serginho Dest prove he's all the way back after his injury.
Yeah, I think that's where a lot of the eyes are going to be, because Serginho Dest was so important for this national team. And then basically didn't take a year off. Obviously, was injured for a year, and he's been coming back, albeit slowly. But we need, I mean, even an 80% of Serginho Dest is a pretty damn good right back / right winger because of the way that he plays. And so if we start to see some of that flair this summer, either in the tournament or even in the games leading up to it, that bodes well, because if we have that type of Serginho Dest come next summer, that's a good thing.
This roster doesn't really bode well for my eventual prediction that the U.S. is going to end up in a back five. I know we build out of a three, and he pushes one of his fullbacks on, but there's only 3 center backs on the roster, and I still feel that is one of our weakest positions that we have in our team, and that's right in the belly, the heart of the belly. Tim Reams, had a so-so season so far for Charlotte FC. Mark McKenzie has had a good first season in France. Chris Richards, fantastic season for him as part of that back 3 on the right side. And then Miles Robinson back in the picture. He's been kind of on the bubble a little bit, but playing well for FC Cincinnati. So I'm interested to see what we get there.
That's 4 center backs, too.
Is that 4? Did
Yes.
I count 4? 1, 2. Yeah, you're right. So 4. I still feel like he's not going to play 3 of them, but maybe we do.
But let me say this. Chris Richards thrived in a back 3 system
playing on
with
the right-hand
Palace,
side, yeah.
Oliver Glasner winning the FA Cup. And he's the guy I look at. Listen, center back, that's the one position I actually would have wanted some fresh blood, and instead we got a lot of the usual faces. But Chris Richards is one of those guys you'd like to see him step up, carry his club form into the national team, and really look like an imposing center back this summer.
But he hasn't. He hasn't.
No.
That's why we have talked over the last couple of weeks and over the last couple of years is that, yeah, you can see he's got quality, and it's wonderful what he did with Crystal Palace, and that's all fine and well. But if you can't translate it to the national team,
okay,
it doesn't matter.
Center back to center back here. If these are the 4 center backs that are on the roster next year, who are you starting? If it's 2.
Well, I do think that Miles Robinson has gotten better, and I think he's further along from his injury. And as he has gotten further along, I think he's gotten better. I think ultimately, and I'll give you my lineup here a little later, but I do think that Miles Robinson is going to be
so
in
you think
there.
Robinson and Chris Richards? Because
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
think, I don't think you can take Chris Richards out right now.
Yep.
As we go to the midfield, you guys mentioned Chris Richards, one of those guys who's been terrific at club level, but it hasn't really happened with the national team yet. Two other guys I would put in that category, Johnny Cardoso and Malik Tillman. So you've got them in that mix. You've got some MLS players like Diego Luna, Sebastian Berhalter, Jack McGlynn. You've obviously got Tyler Adams in there. How do you see the midfield shaking out?
So, look, even missing all the guys that we are missing for this tournament, I look at this midfield, and it's a good midfield, guys. I mean, look, Brendan Aronson, he was left off the Nations League roster. He's back in for the Gold Cup. Great opportunity for him. Tyler Adams, wonderful to see him back and healthy for Bournemouth, but yet still kind of an unknown quantity to Pochettino and how he's going to use him. Sebastian Berhalter, terrific season so far with Vancouver. I love that he got the opportunity. Johnny Cardoso, you and I go back and forth about Johnny. Wonderful club player at Betis. He's rumored to potentially go to Atletico Madrid this summer. Would be a big move. I mean, how could you have a guy, could you have ever imagined a time where we have a guy who's starting every week for Atletico Madrid or in La Liga, but can't even get into the U.S. men's national team starting lineup? Luna, I love. Quinn Sullivan is a super interesting two-way player, midfielder, having a great year for the Philadelphia Union. Malik Tillman back from injury as well. So, like, that's a lot of quality in the midfield. And I think that part of the team is really going to carry this team through the Gold Cup. So, while we're going to sit here and lament all the players that are not there, and you're missing your star player, and you're missing where, like, this is still a good roster. And we're going to talk about this in a minute, but we should absolutely not lower the bar for this team when it comes to the Gold Cup. This team needs to win the Gold Cup.
Absolutely.
Because you know what? Greg Berhalter did it with a B team in 2021. Yep. You cried in Vegas. Yep. We were sweeping up your sweet American tears. And that is the standard when it comes to the U.S. and the Gold Cup.
All right. Well, I don't know if I'm going to cry again, but it is an interesting. And, to your point, I think, when it comes to someone like Luna, who was having this moment, part of what excites people about Luna, I think you mentioned Clint Dempsey a little earlier, is, famously Bruce Arena said about Clint Dempsey, he tries stuff, right? Which is the ultimate compliment in that he has the balls to be able to try these things, which I think Luna does. But I think there's also an element that Clint Dempsey had of running through a wall. And, last time we saw him, a couple of camps ago, blood falling out of his nose and all that kind of stuff. But people love that. People enjoy that. I have people that have told me, and this is how, I guess, down they are on this team. Just give me a handful of players, make them all MLS or some MLS. They don't even have to have big names that are going to run through a wall. And that's the team that I want to support. That's the team that I want to see. And I think Diego Luna epitomizes that type of mentality that a lot of people are craving right now.
I think he is arguably the star attraction on this roster, given the way he's played in MLS this season, the way he played in the Nations League. He might be the player I'm most excited to watch this summer. Stu, you got something on that?
The way you phrase it, secondly, I would agree with. I think he's the most intriguing. There's something about him that makes you want to see that he could be some version of a high-level contributor to this team. But, yeah.
Now, no, I know there are bigger names. Certainly. Now, we go to up top, the forwards. You've got Balogun. Very curious to watch him this summer after an injury-riddled campaign at Monaco. Brian White, Ajiman, Haji Wright, and then Damian Downs, a German-born player who just helped Cologne get promoted up to the Bundesliga. I'm going to drop a bit of a hot take here. I think this roster sets up for the U.S. to play with two up top. Because it seems to be a lot of center forwards and a scarcity of wingers. I know guys like Aronson and Malik Tillman, who are listed as midfielders, could play on the wing. But nevertheless, I think this kind of sets up well for perhaps a 4-5-3-2, a 3-4-1-2, a 4-4-2, something like that.
What's a 4-4-2 Mosse?
I mean, every team defends out of a 4-4-2.
It all comes right back, right? Yeah. Back to the 4-4-2. Hey, listen, I would love. I don't know if that happens, but I would love to see that.
I tell you what, though, Mauricio Pochettino doesn't know his best lineup right now, and that's a fact. And he's hoping to figure some part of that out this summer without his best players. So, good luck.
I will say, lost in all the talk of all the other absences, for every single one of them, there was an explanation. He's tired, he's injured, this and that, Club World Cup. And then when it got to Josh Sargent, Pochettino just said, football decision.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he was just flat out left out. Pochettino right now views Ajiman and Brian White higher than Josh Sargent in the pecking order.
I mean, look, Josh Sargent was in the championship best 11 of the season. It's the second tier in England. So, take stock in that, what you want. He came back from injury, did fantastic for club, but got an opportunity in the Nations League, and maybe Pochettino didn't like whatever he saw from his profile, or feels, I know this guy's limits here, so I want to check out some new guys.
What if Pochettino feels that MLS is better than the championship?
Maybe
right?
He does. I mean, the other one I just want to touch on quickly that we haven't as part of that midfield, Yunus Musa. And I do want to be careful here because it says, it was phrased as personal reasons. Yep. So if it's something serious family-wise, I don't want to go scorched earth. But if there was a player that I felt needed this Gold Cup and needed minutes and needed to find his identity a little bit as a player and find out what position he can play at the next level. I know Mauricio Pochettino feels that way because we talked to him and he's talked to us at length about Yunus Musa. I don't know. I kind of feel like he's hiding behind Christian Pulisic a little bit here. Didn't have a great season with Milan. Wasn't in the starting lineup down the stretch of the season, and yet he's missing this summer. So
and he's probably going to move.
Yeah, two big-name U.S. players that are definitely going to be on the move this summer, I think, are Yunus Musa and Gio Reyna. Now, Reyna's been linked to Real Sociedad. You're our resident La Liga expert as a part owner of Mallorca. What do you think about Sociedad for Gio?
I think Sociedad's a fantastic club, and they actually had a down year this year, finishing, I think they're around 11th in the table, but that's not indicative of the talent that they had, and they sold off a couple of their big-name players in the last transfer window. But in terms of the style that they play, it fits Gio, but I'm not willing to sit here and say I have any clue about what level player Gio Reyna is. He hasn't played meaningful soccer in over a year.
What has he done?
And by the way, Dortmund re-signed him to a contract before he went on loan. So they're going to command some form of a fee. And if I'm putting my hat on as a, club owner and involved in that, I wouldn't be willing to pay, let's just say the number is $15 million. Would you be willing to pay $15 million right now for Gio Reyna?
For Gio Reyna?
Yeah.
No. I mean, if he had been playing and just been okay or whatever, but he hasn't.
I just threw that number out. I don't know if that's his number. Maybe it's more, maybe it's less. But and again, he's another player. If you know you're going to move this summer, if you're his agent, why wouldn't you work with Dortmund and say, look, we're going to work on a solution. We're going to move him. They've openly said, let's move him on. Let's get him in the Gold Cup. What's he going to sit on the bench and play 20 minutes in the Club World Cup?
It's so weird.
If anything, he should be playing in the Gold Cup going into a preseason with a new team, completely fit, feeling great, feeling healthy, built up his body. But that makes too much sense.
I do wonder, we have this exceptional transfer window because of the Club World Cup. Some of these missing players in the U.S. roster, is that because they're negotiating moves already? Pochettino knows something we don't. He doesn't want to get in the middle of that, wants them to focus on their club's future this summer.
All the stuff that we were saying, and I know you mentioned Moose over there, there could be other reasons, but we can only talk about what is out there. All right. So whether it's injury, whether it's personal stuff, whether it's a transfer type of thing that comes out later, fine. But that doesn't mean that we're not going to talk about what has happened here. And when the federation comes out and completely puts it on Christian Pulisic and AC Milan as to why he's not playing in the Gold Cup, that's what we're going to talk about, because I know there's some talk here about Christian Pulisic having injuries and nagging injuries he's got to sort out. Okay, fine. If you want to come out, Christian Pulisic, and tell us exactly what is going on, then do it. But if you don't, then we are going to go by what we have, and this is what we have.
I just think it's a situation that the federation has created by making these type of concessions in the past, and it has set the table to make this feel okay, and where players can have a built-in excuse as to why they are missing, as opposed to saying, this is a priority. This is important for the team. This is important for the federation. This is important for the fans. And I don't care what games you guys have to miss before, but I want everybody at the Gold Cup this summer. And because we haven't, and because, look, the Club World Cup's a big part of that too. That's out of their control because now those players cannot be released. But I just think that if you're Anthony Robinson and you're maybe on the line with your fitness and you're battling a few injuries, I'm not going to take the risk. It's the Gold Cup, whatever. I'm going to focus on my health, and I'm going to be ready for that. That's where it is. I mean, that's the situation.
All right, I understand.
And I'm not saying
there's
it's okay,
a maturity
to
that I can appreciate and respect, and I can understand. You sacrifice in the moment in order to do good things further on down the line. And yes, ultimately,
I hate it, by the way.
Ultimately,
for the
2026 is all that matters if you do well.
Yeah.
But if you don't do well in 2026, everybody's gone. I'm talking about everybody from top to bottom, whether you are part of the United States Soccer Federation men's national team, whether you are the president, whether you are the acting president, whether you're the CEO, everybody is gone because we have had this rampway and we have talked about it for so long. And if we fail after having all of this time to get it as close to right as we possibly can, nothing is ever perfect, but as close to right as we possibly can. And in this moment, we are again a year out, and this is what we're talking about. It's on us. And when I say us, it is on the federation. And so I don't want any excuses come next year when it comes to this team. And if we do fail, I want everybody to resign.
Now, I mentioned that this roster sets up potentially for a 4-4-2. I think you have different ideas. Are you going to take us through your projected starting 11 for the Gold Cup?
Yeah, I could definitely do that. I know producer Sean over there has something like that. Okay, so we talked about the goalkeeping situation. So I do think that Turner is the incumbent. I do think now this is. I don't know if this is what I would do or this is what Pochettino is going to do. So this is what I have here. And again, if this is being used to say, you know what, Pochettino I don't know what I have, and so I am going to try different things. I am going to try different players. Fine. If you're going to bring in White, who's scoring goals like mad up there in Vancouver, I'm going to start him. I'm going to start him up top, okay? I know what Balogun is. I know what the others are, even though they are young, but I'm going to play the hot hand here, and who knows? Maybe we find somebody a year before the World Cup, and he ends up scoring a bunch of goals next summer. So I'm starting him there. You mentioned Diego Luna. I definitely have him in my roster, in my starting 11 there. We mentioned the center back pairing, so I do have Miles Robinson, who I think has gotten a whole lot better here, and then got to put Dest in to kind of just see what he's looking like out there on the right-hand side. I know, Mosse, you had said there's a possible 4-4-2. That obviously would change some things when it comes to how I would set it up. But that's something that I would be comfortable with just to kind of see how it goes.
Yeah, the 4-4-2, I guess, would be inserting Balogun and taking away one of those three you had behind the striker, Aronson, Luna, or Tillman.
What's your rationale for 4-4-2 beyond just that there's the makeup of the roster? Is there something you genuinely feel makes the team better in that
It would
scenario?
just be something different we haven't seen. It would be him experimenting with a different look. So I'd be curious to see just how it plays out in the Gold Cup. Well, you're not buying it?
I just think that we don't have one good forward. I don't want to try and find two good forwards. But I think the strength of this team is truly in the midfield. I'm fascinated to see over the next year, and more specifically over the next month or two, how does Pochettino analyze the team and decide what type of team he wants this to be? Does he want it to be a proactive team on the ball? Does he want us to be a high-pressing team? Does he want us to be a possession-based team? Or does he want us to recognize, which I think, we don't have the top-end talent to compete against the top-end nations, and that's ultimately going to be the difference between this team finishing round of 16, quarterfinals, semifinals, or whatever. I think you have to have a look at the bigger picture here and understand how can we get results against the best teams in the world. And I think we have to be less proactive, more solid at the back, numbers in midfield, counterattack in moments, and just recognize where we are right now. And I think when I look at this team, that's the best way to get results. That's why I keep coming back to, sure, if you play with three in the back, you can push your wingers high. You can throw Dest up as a right winger. You could get Johnny Cardoso on the field, Tyler Adams, Weston McKennie, all these different midfielders that we have. Still find room for Pulisic and Weah and whoever ends up playing up front. I just think that's going to be the best way we can
But
compete.
that pragmatic approach that you're talking about really means you're just playing five in the back.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And fine.
Which is
But
fine.
also against the lesser opposition, you could still make that a very attacking version of a 3-4-2-1, for example.
A lot of people thought, I think you've mentioned this too, when you hired Pochettino, the idea was to instill that sort of Argentinian, South American toughness, the dark arts, if you will. Now, I think that's stereotyping Pochettino a little bit, because if you actually look at his career, it's mostly spent in Europe, not in Argentina.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, do you think, ironically, not having some of the big stars and bringing this type of roster, it might help him instill that identity this summer?
Well, I'm guessing that's why part of the reason you have Sebastian Berhalter and Brian White starting, because I would like to see Johnny Cardoso I mean, this is kind of last chance for him to be like, let's go. You can be a really standout player with the ability that he has for the national team, but is that why you would put somebody like Sebastian? You just want to see, because Brian White's going to bundle around up there. He's going to smash into people. He's a tough guy. I think he carries a little bit of what you talked about earlier.
Yeah, and if you've made it clear that you are going to use this Gold Cup to try to find something more, and I think that's what's happening here, then I say then do it. So what happens if they win the Gold Cup, right? I mean, we have a different look in general of this team, but we've won the Gold Cup plenty of times before, so it's not anything necessarily new. But does our view of the team change? Does our view of Pochettino change? And does our view of whether it's Pulisic or anybody else that wasn't there change? Because maybe it lights a fire, and maybe it's, again, says to them, hey, now when you come back, I mean, the best thing in the world, I think, for players like Pulisic, players like Jedi, players like McKennie and others that aren't there, is for this team to do well. Because then it means when you come back in, you got to make sure that you bring it. And I think that there is an element of this team that's being questioned as to whether you care. Well, now you need to care, and you need to show that you deserve either the break that you were given or the breaks that you are given because of your high profile, whether it's where you play and how much money you make and all that kind of stuff. So what does this team look like come the end of the summer?
Look, I think my biggest takeaway for this team, my hope is that they make us believe, but more importantly, they make themselves believe that they are a good team again. And that is the key here. And that's going to be the most important thing to set the stage for next year, because I think this team right now, and where all of my frustration is stemming from when it comes to Pulisic missing and Yunus Musa and down the line, is that I don't think this team has any confidence right now. And it shows in the results. When they lose to Panama, they lose to Canada, they get knocked out of the Copa America. So anything that they're going to tell me right now about where they feel this team is and that they can compete, I don't believe them. And I don't think they believe that themselves. And that's where my frustration is, because they don't really owe us anything. I think they always owe the fans a little bit of something, because these are the people that pay their hard-earned money to go watch these guys and turn up to, and they understand. The fans also recognize that these guys are representing them. They're representing the United States. They're representing us on the biggest stage. But ultimately, the most important thing is that this team and that Pochettino find something this summer that makes them feel they can do something special next year.
If they win the Gold Cup by grinding out results without any real individual standouts, I don't think it'll change the calculus that much. But I want to see 2 or 3 players really emerge this summer and stake their claim for a big role in 26. I'd love to see Diego Luna use this Gold Cup as a launching pad for being a starter in 26. And then if you add some of those European-based stars, but you sprinkle in 2 or 3 Diego Lunas, all of a sudden you might have the right mix that could lead to success at the World Cup.
If I'm going to put you on the spot here for gambling odds of most likely players to have a breakout tournament and be the stars of this team, where would you be handicapping?
I've been saying it all pod. I think it's Diego Luna.
Okay, Luna. Who else is maybe a dark horse there? You think somebody like Brian White?
Yes,
Berhalter?
Brian White and Berhalter. Yeah, I'd love the way Vancouver's played. I'm going to ask you about them in a minute when we talk CONCACAF Champions Cup. But yeah, so I would say Luna, Berhalter, and White would be the 3.
Because look, that's what we're going to be selling all month long. And it's not, we're going to get caught up on the fact that Pulisic's not there and yada, yada. But truly, this is an opportunity for this next group of guys to push through and to do something special, to where your point, when those guys come back, you'd be like, oh, what's up, guys? We don't really need you. We're good.
Exactly. That's
right.
That's what you want to do.
That's the point.
That's what you want to do. All right. Well, listen, I just want to reiterate that we find ourselves, and I say we because it's part of who we are, but that this team finds itself in this position at this time is mind-boggling to me. And it's sad. It should not be this, but this is the reality. And so fix it. Pochettino, you're being paid a lot of money to fix it. And if this is what you believe is going to help fix it relative to being successful next summer, fine. We can have our angst and we can have our criticism. And I think it's fair, and I think we've talked about a lot of it here. But ultimately, the whistle's going to blow. And ultimately, whether it's anybody here, anybody watching, anybody listening, Luke from Denver.
I love that, by the way.
Yeah, you need to make sure that after this summer, Luke says, yeah, all of my faith, all of my belief, all of my confidence, all of my history, and to your point, all of my money is well-founded. And Luke's not going anywhere. He said it in his message. But you have to answer that question. If you don't care, then why should we care? And the fact that we find ourselves on Thursday, May 22nd in the year 2025, questioning whether our U.S. men's national team cares, that is a big problem. It's not unsolvable, but it is a big problem.
Now, let's end this show on a lighter note. Alexi, did you know that Stu Holden recently appeared on a game show?
Look at this guy. Look at this guy. If there ever was a person tailor-made for the game show circuit, it is Stu Holden.
Come on down.
Why don't we let you set up this clip?
So I had the wonderful opportunity to be on game show 25 Words or Less. Meredith Vieira, iconic hosts from Today's Show and The View, and she was awesome, by the way. But yeah, I flew out to Atlanta and knocked out a bunch of different episodes, and it was very fun. My role is a celebrity guest on there and playing against another teammate. And the object of the game is there's 6 words you get given, and you have to try to get your team there in less than 25 words, but you bet it down against the other player to kind of dare who could do it in the least amount of words. And then there's a big money round at the end if your team wins and you have a chance to win.
It's like Name That Tune, but actually for words.
For
so I think we have a clip actually.
But it's crazy though. You start getting like really nervous towards when the clock is ticking down and your head's trying to get these people somewhere. So I had a moment. I think you guys have the clip here. You gonna play it?
Oh my goodness.
Debit card action.
Swipe. Purchase. Buy.
Pass. Murderer action.
Kill.
DC state.
Washington. No. Maryland,
College.
Virginia. Right, okay.
Fancy jewelry.
Diamond. Necklace.
Pizza, cheese.
Mozzarella.
3 words.
Synonym, pull out.
Not your
I hear a lot of laughing back there on those clues.
I'm just looking at Alexia's face. She's like, I am not going on.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, my wife texted me first of all and was like, opposite withdrawal. Like, it's a very easy one for deposit, or was it withdrawal? Yeah, opposite deposit. Yeah.
Opposite deposit.
Yeah, but I mean, like the opposite pull out, and everybody lost it. And
can I ask you a question?
or synonym pull out.
You do know where Washington, D.C. is and what Washington, D.C. is, right? Okay.
Yes, yeah. Maryland.
The District of Columbia?
I know.
Okay, that's what D.C. stands for, right?
Yeah, she got there.
She got there. No, it's right. I mean, that's amazing.
I did also get a clue. Somebody said they were trying to get me to the word. They said European city. And I guess 1 million European cities. And at the end, I found out the city was Vancouver.
Oh, jeez. Oh my God.
But I tell you, when you're under pressure, it just like
right, yeah, it's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure. All right, well, we're going to look forward to seeing you on 25 Words or Less over there with Meredith Vieira
now,
and
Stu,
company.
when you're not appearing on game shows or coming on this pod, you're also a Fox Soccer commentator, and you're going to have a busy next couple of weeks with John Strong. I did want to ask you about that. First up, CONCACAF Champions Cup final, Cruz Azul, Vancouver. Which way are you leaning on?
I'm going Vancouver. I mean, ride the hot hand. I love the way this team is playing right now, and they've gotten it done actually in that stadium already in this tournament, and I think they can do it again. And then, yeah, Alexi, you loved last summer. I think it was the Copa America, right? When I had my spiel of all the cities that I was going to.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm going to here. John Strong and I are actually heading off in a week or so to head over to Germany on June 2nd. We're going to fly over there for the Nations League finals and semifinals. It's going to be awesome. Portugal and Germany, Spain, France. Come back from that, come back here, then we kick off the Gold Cup. So
yeah, it's so the CONCACAF Champions Cup final is June 1st. Yeah. Then UEFA Nations League semis, Germany, Portugal, June 4th. In Munich, the next day in Stuttgart, France, Spain. And then a few days later, the final back in Munich. Alexi and I have proclaimed Lamine Yamal the best player in the world. You're going to get a look at him in that Spain-France semifinal. Yamal against Mbappe. Are you on that page too?
Yeah. I think he's the best player in the world right now. I haven't done one of his games in person yet, so I'm super excited to see because kind of like the first time I saw Mbappe in person and called his games was the World Cup in Russia 2018. And that was when he was 19 years old and just flying past dudes and just looked on a totally different level. And you could instantly see this guy was going to be big star and is a big star. But I think the way Lamal not only takes over games, but makes everybody around him better, I think is, so many comparisons to him and Messi. And Mbappe had a terrific individual season at Real Madrid this year, but a down year for them. They didn't win anything, which is a big failure in Real Madrid circles. So I'm not putting that all on him because he had a good season, but I can't wait to see that combination in those games.
I think Lamine Yamal could use the 26 World Cup here in the United States the same way Mbappe did 2018 in Russia. We're also wondering if the U.S. will have a good World Cup in 26. We're treating this Gold Cup as a dress rehearsal of sorts. We found out the roster today to bring this back full circle. Any final thoughts before we bid everyone adieu?
Yeah, I know it's a little head-scratching, and I know it's a little disappointing in terms of the way that this roster has dropped and what it is. But, I think we've talked a little bit about it. At the end of this summer, we may have found new stars. We may have, as I said, reignited a belief in this team. And I think that's what you have to hope for. I remain incredibly bullish and excited about what this next year has to offer. And then obviously going into next summer. We here at the State of the Union, we will continue to bring it in to you each and every week. Stu, thanks for showing up again.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here, man. Before I set off on my travels, and you guys will be podding away back here.
You're gonna be having
no,
a good
look,
time.
I think all of that is true about what you just said, and it's our job to come on here to try to analyze and I think always contextualize a lot of the stuff that is happening. And it's okay to have emotion, I think, when we talk and we think about these things, but it doesn't change. For me, I know I'm biased because we'll be working it and we get excited for these big events, but the Gold Cup is opportunity. It's an opportunity for this U.S. team to rehab their image with or without the big couple of players and stars that this team is missing. And I tell you what, when I'm in that stadium for the U.S.'s opening game in San Jose, I'm going to be excited. I'm going to be fired up, and I hope that the players bring that, and I hope they use this with a little bit of the chip on the shoulder and the way that maybe people will talk about this team because Pulisic's not there and Weah and McKennie and whatever. I don't care. I care about the 11 guys that are out there on that field representing our country, and I know these guys care, and I hope that they show it this summer.
Mosse, anything before we go?
My only comment is another summer of soccer is upon us. It feels real now with rosters dropping. Very excited. We got so much stuff going on. I don't think we've ever had so many different competitions in one summer that we're covering. Yeah. We've got this CONCACAF Champions Cup final I mentioned. We've got the UEFA Nations League Final Four.
I know my prep is all over the place.
Yeah, we've got the Gold Cup. We've got the Women's Euros in Switzerland. We've got the Copa America Femenina. So jam-packed summer, jam-packed couple of months. We'll be potting a lot. Stu will be all over the place calling these games. Very excited about it.
All right. Well, listen, we thank everybody that tuned in. I know for this live State of the Union. Keep downloading and reviewing and doing all the different things that you do, right, left, up, and down over there on the old, what's the one over there, the YouTube thing. Yeah, smash that button, double fisting up and down. Yeah, that's what we're doing. And the Spotifys and the Apples and all the different stuff that we have out there. We'll talk to you again, next week, right? All right, so have a wonderful weekend on and off the soccer field. And until then, and as always, my friends, size the day.